questions we wrestle with as Christians about who God is, how do we live out our faith, what is the Bible, what is the truth of the Bible, what are we supposed to believe, how are we supposed to live? There are really big, deep questions that we ask each other, that we ask God, that we wrestle with ourselves. And that's why the Cultivate podcast exists, to help us go deeper in our understanding of who God is, His Word, and the way that He's called us to live. Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are now week 2 in a series that we are basing on a summer kind of Bible study discussion, lecture series.
It does say lectures on it.
Lectures.
Yeah. On the graphic designs I made.
It's called Summer Slam, followed by WrestleMania.
Did you
and
ever
then the
hear
Royal
Aaron
Rumble.
Carter's smash hit, How I Beat Shaq? And he's
that
like,
cannot be relevant.
Put it in the hoop, slam! It's a really good song. We should listen to it after.
Absolutely. Anyways, and we're just kind of walking our way through some kind of deep theological topics. We're ultimately going to get into some questions about understanding and studying the Bible. There's going to be a lot of really cool things that are come out of our summer seminar. There's 5 of those, and then we're going to do podcasts based on all the things that we talk about. So we're making sure that all that great content that we're taking our church through this summer also ends up in this format for people who are outside the church, people who weren't able to make it. And so in order to facilitate this, I was the first speaker. And if there's any way I want to get content that I have out there to the podcast world, if I got to choose, I would say I would want Abigail Boone.
I'm your proxy.
To be here asking me questions because you are the expert. You are the expert question asker.
Thank you. Yes.
You both craft questions well, you ask them well, and then you're good at...
Well, you say interesting things, so it makes it pretty easy.
Oh, I appreciate that.
The day you run out of interesting things to say, our conversation might stop. But
it'll be time to retire then.
Yeah. Or you can be the pastor that preaches.
The best I can figure, I'm like, maybe I'm 2/3 of the way there.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I've been at it for 30 years. Another 15, I'll be 67.
Oh, well, you don't have to retire at that point.
I don't? Can I slow down?
There's a few good ones out there, and you're one of them.
Can we move to podcasts like every other week when I'm 67?
Yeah, we can do that. That.
Perfect.
All right, well, we got nothing short of another heavy hitter for this week.
Last time we talked about original sin.
Correct. And this one, you might have to correct me of how the question was phrased, but it was, why does God send people to hell?
Why would a good God
send people to hell?
Right.
Yeah, that's, an easy softball.
Let me bounce it back to you. How do you take that question? What do you think that question is asking?
I hear that question and I'm thinking either they know someone that died and they don't want to think something bad, or they don't think it's nice for there to be anything but good and happy and rainbows and butterflies. And, they don't like to, which I think is a not recent as in the last couple of years, but a very new generational thing that people don't like to view bad as an option.
Right. Okay.
Everything is plausible to come out, have a good outcome. There's nothing that should be called wrong. Yeah. There's no punishment should exist.
Yeah. Maybe there's just a limit, right? There's a limit to how much punishment a good God would put on someone.
Right.
Like we can imagine God punishing a little.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a governor on it somewhere, some limit of some kind,
but it almost seems a little bit existentialist. I listened to, this is probably a throwback, but Tommy Nelson, for all those random people out there who are still Tommy Nelson fans, he's a seminary professor, maybe
Denton Bible Church.
There
pastor?
You go, cool. So he did a sermon series over the 60s, and he talked about how there's different isms that happen in existentialism. When it was, we can all find truth, but I'm looking for my own version of truth. And it almost seems like you can't tell me that this is wrong. I made up my own good. And so why would there ever be a God that even considers hell?
Yeah.
Because
I'm going to take it in like someone understands the basic structure of sin, death, and Jesus.
Okay.
But feels that the punishment of hell is too excessive.
Okay.
right? Because ultimately, like you ask that question, why would a good God send people to hell? The framing of it, the framing of the question tells you something.
Right.
And again, I'm sure this was workshopped between whoever asked the question in the women's Bible study, through Lauren, our women's ministry director, to you, and all. So probably it's probably not word for word from anybody, but even the question last week wasn't like, "Hey, tell me about original sin. Should I should I believe in original sin?"
Like, you don't have to if you don't want to.
Should you?
Yeah,
you probably should.
Right, but
do you have to?
No.
I don't know. What do we like? What do we ask? Like, why would a good God send people to hell? Like,
right.
There's another way of framing the exact same question. Why should a good God force people who don't want to worship him for eternity?
Right. No, see, I feel like that's getting a little bit too far, though, because that's defining what we think heaven is.
Well, it is a place where we are in the presence of God forever.
Right.
And we are, in some capacity, living a life fully worshiping and fully devoting to him. When I say worship, I don't mean singing. Singing is not the same thing. Like someone spends their whole life rejecting God. I do not want to follow God. I do not want to follow God. I do not want to be around God. I do not want to be in his presence. I don't want to have anything to do with him, and says and does that their whole life. And then they die and God be like, surprise,
you're hanging out with me.
Well, forever,
Right,
for eternity.
right.
Like, I mean, is that a reflection of a good God?
No.
And so you phrase the question differently, and you're like, that's what I'm saying. Like, what are we really getting at here? So let's just kind of, again, theological house.
Sure.
Jesus Christ died for sins.
Mm-hmm.
What is sin? Well, falling short of God's standard of holiness, his perfection, not his perfection for us, but his perfection. I've fallen short. I've fallen short. And Romans 6:23, the wage of sin is death, both a physical death and a spiritual separation from God.
Right.
That is the consequence. Now, we're not asking the question theoretically, would a good God allow sin to separate us from him at all?
That's a different question.
That's a different question. Let's assume that we're a yes on that. Sin does cause a barrier between us and God. And that barrier has to be overcome. And that's what Jesus does. Jesus died to overcome that barrier, to reconcile us back to him, to give us life, to save us, to redeem us, to free us, all the different verbs that are used to describe this. And so I'm separated. I want to be reconciled. I choose to follow Jesus. He dies for me. He death on the cross. So now I am restored into a relationship with God. Romans chapter 5, God demonstrates his own love for us, that while we're enemies, Christ died for us. And so now I am one of God's children. John 1:12. We'll just keep popcorning verses all day.
Brag. For
as many as received him, to those who believed in his name, he gives the right to become children of God. So I was a sinner worthy of death, and now I am an adopted son or daughter of God because I have both believed in his name and received him. So now I am now in a state in this life of being redeemed and an adopted child of God. And then when I die, John 3:16, God so loved the world, should not perish but have everlasting life. That is not a promise of something that's going to happen later. It is a state of being that lasts forever. I now have eternal life. And so now I am with God. Another person is choosing, their sin has separated them from God, and they are choosing to stay that way.
Right. Because implicit in all of those verses you just quoted is a choice. Right.
We talked about this last week. Mm-hmm. Maybe you were born a sinner.
Right.
And so you didn't have a choice. You didn't have a choice in the separation, but you do have the ability in some way to receive Jesus. Mm-hmm. The same Romans 5 says that this death is available. His death is available to all. Right. Adam's sin came to us all, and Jesus' death is available to all. And so it is available to everyone. And someone is saying, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. No, thank you. I don't want that. Or choosing to worship a false god. They're saying that they don't want that. They don't want that. And so then you die.
Right.
And there is a promise of eternal life in the presence of God, free for sin forever. And then someone who makes a decision to not pursue Christ, to not follow God, continues to live after death, not with God.
Yeah.
The word sinned, I mean, that is the consequence of a life apart from God. I want to be apart from God.
Right.
I'm giving you a limited window of time to not be.
Limited window, your whole life.
Right? And then after that, your fate is sealed. You are saying you do not want to be with me. And so those who want to be with me will be with me. So like, why would a just God save his enemies?
Right.
Why would a holy God die for sinners? Like, the natural flow is, my sin is rebellion against God. I'm choosing to be a rebel against God. That is, I got onto this moving sidewalk, and now it's taking me this way.
Right.
Why would God come onto this moving sidewalk and snatch anybody off when we are?
Right.
We made it's not God that sends us to hell. It is our sin that sends us to hell. It is our rebellion that sends us to hell. Again, back to last week, whether or not that was influenced at all by Adam or not. It was Adam chose for all of us. Right. Adam put us all on the moving sidewalk.
Right.
Even if you don't believe that, we have all made a decision to also get on the moving sidewalk. And so, and that's where this is where it goes. I am choosing to separate myself from God, and God is allowing me the full consequence of that.
Right.
But he chose to grab some people off and to save them. Yes.
This gets into a much larger discussion and maybe stuff that we don't want to touch in this specific podcast, but that kind of gets into, well, do you decide yourself to step off the sidewalk, or is he plucking off who he wants from the sidewalk?
There's a dumb thing that old people in my church used to say. No. There's this dumb phrase that old people in my church growing up used to say, and they would try to confuse you.
Okay.
Hey, so do you walk to school or pack your lunch?
Yes.
You ever heard that phrase before?
No, I've never heard that.
It's dumb.
Right.
I feel okay about saying it because I'm sure all the people who said that, I mean, they were old
they're dead.
They're old when I was a kid. Do you walk to school or pack your lunch? I mean, it's like, like, and you're just kind of like, Like when I was little, I immediately understood what that was and thought it was dumb. It wasn't that I was confused. It's like,
I'm confused.
I don't know which one. It's actually both. It's actually nearly good. It's just a dumb thing to say.
Yeah.
But all that is an example of what is called a false dichotomy.
Okay.
You have given a false choice.
Okay.
Is God choosing people, or am I choosing him?
Right.
Why or? I think the Bible makes it very clear that both of those things are happening.
Yeah.
Both of those things are happening.
Okay.
But the reality of it is we've all chosen. The wages of sin is death. We have all chosen to do something that's consequence is death.
Right.
But the gift of God, it is a gift. And so, again, just a reframing of I'm choosing this, and God is intervening to prevent us from having that. And some of us are even still, while on this moving sidewalk, are being like, no. And every act is an act of grace. We're not in a state. And again, maybe this is how these two, last week's episode and this week's episode, how they're tied, how they're tied together, because. So is our natural state, we're good, and God is sending some good people, and some people are going, God's sending people over here, or are we by our very nature sinners, and the act of what God is doing is saving some.
Right.
But just and this is why, again, this is what we're saying. We're talking about, where does this fit into our theological house? It's not that these things are the crucial issues around the gospel, but how we reason through them kind of shows how deeply and how well we understand the gospel.
Well, and it shows how you view God and his character.
Right. And And again, so God is giving us the freedom to remain separated from him.
Right.
And then the question then would be, for me, if we're going to ask different next level questions, and would be, is it fair that God seals the fate
Right.
at the moment of your physical death?
Right.
At the moment of your physical death, you have now sealed your fate, and now you don't get to choose. Because imagine some people living in eternity, 100 years, 1,000 years would be like, I think I regret my decision. But
Sure.
I would also, but is that everyone?
Right.
Are there some people who are like,
I wish I was in hell.
I never wanted, like,
Right.
are they still angry?
Right.
I was like, I don't, and it's like, should God continue? I had a professor in college that would ask this question, like, wouldn't a good God continue to pursue people?
Right.
Even after death. I mean, so I think that there are deeper, better questions to ask than why would a good God send people to hell? Because I think that is a dishonest, it's too strong. Maybe it's not a dishonest framing of the question, because that's not an accurate framing of the question, because God is not sending people to hell. People are choosing to remain separated from him.
Right. They're not accepting the free gift of God.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in one, I don't even know what this thought or belief system is called, but I know some people have the thought that ultimately God is just going to save everyone. It's not universalism, that ultimately he is a good God and people just don't know how to choose for themselves, or they may just ignore it and not give it enough attention throughout their life, but ultimately he is going to save all of us. So why do you not believe in that? And
do we have any reason to believe? Let's just pretend that the Bible doesn't exist and we're just trying to wrestle with life.
Sure.
Do we have any reason to believe that God is trying to prevent us from receiving the consequences of our actions?
Yes. No. That was a confusing question.
I want to ask it as a question then. Everything about this world says my actions have consequences.
Yes.
And there does not seem to be a God who is interested in stopping that.
Okay, yes. The ball's already rolling.
He seems to be allowing us to experience consequences.
Correct. Yes.
That just seems to be the way that okay, see how that works out for you. A minimal amount of whoa.
Right.
More just kind of, hey, I'm over here when that's not working out.
Right.
But if you want to go over there,
right,
I'm not going to keep you from going over there. That does not seem to be God's MO in the way that he deals with us on earth.
Right.
You go to the Bible, seems like the same sort of thing. He allows a significant amount for a God that is all powerful. He allows a significant amount of freedom for people.
Yeah.
So why would a God who, for our entire lives, has structured things in a way where we get to fully explore the consequences of our own bad decisions, why would at one moment he be like, well, not anymore though?
I see. Yeah.
Not anymore. That's a change that's a complete change in the way that he interacts with us.
Right.
I mean, that like now no more. Now I'm going to force you to choose this.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily the answer to why I don't believe in universalism. Right. I think the reason I don't believe in universalism, I mean, many things that Jesus said, one of which was the path towards life is narrow and few find it. And the path to destruction is wide and everybody's finding it. That, Jesus, John 3:16 and 17, right? God so loved the world, he sent his only son, that people wouldn't perish but have eternal life. Verse 17, he didn't send Jesus to condemn the world, but to save it.
Right.
Because the world is already condemned.
Yeah.
I mean, is a description of the world as being in a state of condemnation for which Jesus needs to come and save people. A universalism suggests that no one is in a state of condemnation.
Right.
again, apart from this one professor that I had in college that would describe it in terms of he believed that Jesus was the only way, the world did stand condemned, but God was still pursuing people through Jesus post-death.
Right.
Hebrews 9:27 speaks against that. For as appointed as everyone's going to die once, and after this comes judgment.
Right.
And also the parable that Jesus talks about, where he's talking about heaven and hell. This rich guy and Lazarus is what it's called, and the rich man is in hell, and he's asking for relief from Abraham, and Abraham says, "Sorry, dude, there's a chasm here that I can't go to where you are, and
Right.
you can't come to here." And so there's not a bridge. There's not a bridge that's built. So it seems like that Jesus didn't believe in universalism.
Yeah.
And Jesus also did not believe in a post-death salvation.
Right.
That it is how we live in this life that determines our fate.
Yeah.
Whether or not we think that is fair.
Well, that's a whole other discussion.
I mean, is it fair to have to face the consequences of my decisions?
Yes.
That is a very American thing to say no to that. That somehow there should be an entity of some type, some benevolent institution, some government, be it local, state, federal, worldwide, that there should be some entity out there preventing people from having to live out the consequences of their bad decisions.
Which I think is I can't remember, my sister sent me this or someone did. It was a meme about school systems back in the day that a kid fails a test and there's the principal and the parents on one side of the desk and they're like, why you didn't study, whatever. And now the current day one is the kid and the parents on the other side yelling at the teacher of like, why didn't you give my kid a better grade?
Yeah.
And I do think that's a more current frame of mind, which is what I was going to say at the beginning, that it's maybe not years old, but kind of growing over the last couple of generations, that we are very consequence averse and we don't want to come to terms with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deeper question is, I would say two. I would say two of them. One is, has God given us too much freedom? Has God allowed us too much rope?
Right.
Most people would answer to that question, no. But really, that's really what they're getting at. I wish God restricted our freedom and would not allow people to choose things that were destructive.
Right.
Well, I was like, well, what would it look like if we lived that way? Well, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that you were living that way because you wouldn't be living.
You'd be living on a tether.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't be living. You wouldn't be living. Yeah. And you wouldn't be living at all. You would just, I'm not making an AI comment here, so let's pretend it's 20 years ago, right? Okay. A robot doesn't know that he's living,
right?
He doesn't have any sort of self-awareness,
right?
And even to the point to where AI is developed, doesn't have any self-awareness. You still got to get into science fiction books to get into that. And so, to me, I don't think people mean to ask that, but really, that's what they're saying. People should not be able to make choices that have that severe of consequences.
Right.
The second framing of the question would be, is the consequence too severe?
As if like it shouldn't be eternal or it shouldn't be final.
So is the nature of hell too much of a severe punishment?
Okay.
And so that leads us to the question,
well, what is hell?
What is hell?
Yeah.
Right.
So kind of on that question, start of when I first heard you give this talk, my question was hell created when the first sin occurred? Was this something that people of the Old Testament, did they have a concept of hell? Was that something that came about whenever Jesus came? Like what has been the historical view of hell? Is this something that all people have been concerned or knowing that is a consequence of choosing sin?
Well, the New Testament tells us that hell was created. If we're talking about the origin story of the place hell, then its origin is it was created for Satan and his demons at their rebellion. It's for them. That is when God created it. This is
at their rebellion.
At their rebellion, I'm going to create this place, and it's for you. So the idea that
was like pre-world.
Yeah. So that the idea that Satan is like the manager,
sure,
of hell. We made that up.
Okay.
We made that up, right? And so almost every show or movie or cartoon has Satan is down there. He's having a good time.
It's like a sweatshop.
And it's a sweatshop, and he's having a good time, and he's glad that people are coming down there that
And
he
suffering.
gets to torment.
Right.
When in fact it is created as a place of torment for him.
Right.
Which is very different from all the shows, including
The Good Place.
The Good Place, talked about briefly off camera. That is not what it is. It is a place created for him. He doesn't want to go there either.
Right.
And so, but as far as how the theology of that developed, I mean, you just see it as with most pieces of theology in the Old Testament, it happens progressively.
Mm-hmm.
People understand it slowly and surely over time, from the concept of Sheol in the Old Testament to this word Gehenna that comes a little bit later, to the word Hades that comes a little bit later, all kind of blurring the lines more and more between, are we just talking about death in general as a punishment that everybody faces? And it seems like also those words also get used in the context of just death, but bad death.
Right.
And you see the understanding evolving and progressing through the Old Testament to, okay, there are consequences in this life for the next life.
Right.
I mean, just imagine that you live 10, 15,000 years ago in an agrarian society with short lifespans. You don't really have a whole lot of time for deep philosophical reflections. Right. We're just trying to survive, and I'm trying to connect with God on this earth to kind of bless me. And God is the simplicity of the way that we can think and the way that we interact. God meets us there and gives us enough information that they can understand. And he is progressing all of us through that and helping us understand him in deeper and deeper ways. And so we see it evolve. And by the time you get to Jesus most certainly had a very clear picture of the afterlife, that there's a binary choice, and how you live in this life determines whether or not you go to, sorry, pun not intended, to the good place or the bad place.
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
Because that is similar to the parable where it's the sheep and the goats.
Right.
That their decisions
sheep and
are
goats,
made.
Wheat and tares.
Yeah.
Lazarus and the rich man. There are just a lot of teachings and parables where Jesus is referencing, what happens in this life has an eternal effect on the way on what will happen to you in your next life.
All right. So this question, try not and take it into me asking about some type of belief system around this type of hell or that type of hell. That's don't go that far into the question.
Okay.
But you saying that basically I guess you could say Hollywood version of hell is Satan operating the factory and you're just getting whipped and scorched by sparks.
Right.
And, that's not the case. How you just kind of broke down that really it's a place of torment for him as well. So is hell and the punishment of hell really just separation from God?
Right. You told me not to answer it a particular way, and I don't know what you meant. So I'm going to answer it this way, and you can be like, dude, that is exactly what I told you not to do.
I just mean I'm not a camp here.
Right. No, I get you. There are three primary images that I believe that the New Testament uses to describe what hell is going to be like: fire, darkness, and destruction.
Okay.
Which any of them by themselves are actually fairly
opposite of each other.
Well, they're vivid.
Yeah.
Like you get the impression of not just of isolation, of pain.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of they're not weak metaphors.
Right.
They're very strong images. And so then people like us, which we do, we believe in the full authority of the scriptures, and we believe in what is referred to as a literal interpretation of the Bible. It's the phrase literal. The word literal is misunderstood. How do you interpret a metaphor literally?
Right.
The point that the metaphor is trying to make, you should
literal.
Believe it.
Yes.
It is true.
Yeah.
And so, not that when Jesus says, I'm a gate, that he has hinges. But when he says he is a gate, he's using a metaphor to communicate that he is an opening.
Right.
between two places.
Right.
If you want to get from where you are to this different place, I am the way that you pass through that.
Yeah.
So he is a gate, metaphorically. What does that mean? Well, it means this, and I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
That's what we mean by literal interpretation. So if we say that hell is fire, destruction, and darkness, and I believe that literally, you can't mean literally, because all three of those things cannot exist in the same place.
It's like rock, paper, scissors.
No.
It is. They all beat each other.
You can't say you believe in literal fire
and darkness.
Because literal fire creates light.
Correct.
And the point in which you try to reconcile those two, you're saying, well, it's a different kind of fire. Oh, so it's not a literal fire.
Right.
And you can't say that there is literal fire forever.
And there not be destruction.
Right, because literal fire destroys things.
Right.
So literal fire will destroy things, and so those two things go together. But then that would make hell temporary.
Correct.
Or at least your awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is hell like? I'm as clear on that as I am what heaven is going to be like.
Okay.
I really don't think that I have any deep level clarity on it beyond just good, bad, with God, without God.
So you think we'll be able to feel that? Feel the separation from God?
Yeah, I think it will be. I don't think that we realize, even the people who are far from God right now, how blessed they are to live in a place where the presence of God exists.
Yeah.
What if the presence of God did not exist here? What would that be like?
Right.
We think, well, it's kind of what it is right now. I mean, just look how dark and awful everything's are right now.
Right.
Well, yeah, I get you. So you have a sense of the world being dark, metaphorically.
Right.
What if all light was gone?
If all that was
everything that even could be remotely be good about this world were removed, what would that be like?
Right.
And I think it is even deeper and more significant than that. And will there be flames there? Will it be pitch black dark there? I don't know. I don't believe that was the intent of the use of those two words.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that I don't believe in a literal understanding of the Bible. I think that putting those two things together, you can't put those two things together literally. And I think what Jesus was trying to communicate was it's going to hurt and it's going to be dark.
Yeah.
And you will be destroyed. And whether or not that has a process that has an end date to it, which would make you an annihilationist.
I know, that's what I didn't want you to get to.
You didn't want me to get into that?
No, I did, but I didn't want you to categorize it as that yet.
Right. And so destruction does seem to imply that. And I'm not going to be surprised. I guess I hold all this enough open-handedly to, if hell were any number of things, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
I would be genuinely surprised if there was a bridge from hell to heaven.
Sure.
That people could get on to go either direction.
Right.
Seems like Jesus was very, very clear against that.
Right.
But the nature of it, if it turned out that, hey, the conscious punishment is temporary, but then there's destruction, and the destruction is the thing that is eternal, that wouldn't surprise me. Or if it were not just a conscious, eternal separation from God, that wouldn't surprise me. And some people's like, well, one is better than the other. And like, I tell you, there is nothing that scares me more than thinking about not existing.
Really?
Like, not existing seems way worse to me than being consciously punished.
Okay.
The idea of not existing. I mean, not everybody's the same way, but I think it's also not to
get, not to have kids and stuff?
Not to get too far off here, but it's like, is life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty? Which one of those is the crueler punishment?
Right.
I mean,
it's a hot topic.
I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty for spiritual reasons,
right?
But I'm not trying to get into that right now. But I'm just like, you object to it because it is cruel,
right?
Well, life, you're going to spend the rest of your life in this darkest of places.
Right.
That's just differently cruel.
Right. A different type.
And so either way, annihilationism does not make me think
it's a
God
more
is nicer.
palatable.
God is now
Right.
nice because of
Right.
annihilationism.
Right.
They both are very differently scary.
Yeah.
And both very differently a natural consequence to choosing to live a life in rebellion of God, which is not the same as why does God send people to hell?
Right. Well, and I think that does kind of bring it back to what the question is asking. You know, if someone pitted it up against me and they're saying, why would you believe in a God who sends people to hell? And I would kind of frame it as, well, I'm not really believing in the sweatshop factory where they're just getting whipped. I don't know if I do believe in that, but I believe that there is a big difference in being with God and not being with God. And you choose that while you have this time here. And I feel like surely most people could logically get behind that.
I believe that God, why do you believe that a good God would send people to hell? I'm going to tell you what I believe. I believe that God chooses to allow us to feel the full consequences of our behavior. He chooses to allow us to reject him. And he seals that decision upon our death.
Yeah.
So that's his involvement in sending people to death, sending people to hell. It's not, he didn't send them there. It's just at the point of their death was like, okay,
Right.
your ability to be rescued has now ended.
Right.
I was trying to rescue you your whole life.
And you did. Yeah.
And you rejected me. And now I am ending that pursuit.
Yeah.
That is not the same as sending someone to hell, because if I believe that eternal life begins
with the choice.
When you receive Jesus, I'm experiencing eternal life right now.
Right.
And I will experience it more fully in a different place. I believe that that we condemned ourselves to separation from God at the moment of our sin, right? And we will continue to experience that, but ultimately, eventually, in a worse place.
Right.
But that is just not logically or theologically the same as God sending people to hell.
Right. Right. Well, I think that about hits on all angles of it.
We scratched the surface. We scratched the surface of all the angles of it. Anyways, hey, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back next week with another episode. Abigail and I will be again. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Cultivate podcast. Our hope is that you are taking steps to go deeper in your faith, that you are asking big questions and you're looking for answers. We hope that we can be a resource for you through our podcast and any other way that we can help you. You can find all our episodes anywhere that you can find podcasts, including YouTube. And we would love for you to go there and check out and listen to any of the other episodes that you feel that it can encourage you or help you in your faith. If you are local, we would love to help you get connected at our church. You can find us at thegrovechurch.org. If you go to the Connect link, you can find all the information you need about our services in person or online. We would love to connect with you on a Sunday or online. Any way that we can help you, pray for you, please let us know. And again, thank you so much for joining us.